Do you remember Mumblecore?
Remember the Puffy chair when we were little?
Yeah.
The independent film subgenre that centered around non-traditional storytelling, naturalistic dialogue, and extremely low budgets around 2005, 2008. Well, I mean, I really don't, because I was like 3 to 6 during those years, but either way, it was like a fresh approach to filmmaking. Authentic, minimalistic, and deeply relatable. That gave a lot of up-and-coming filmmakers a chance to really establish themselves. So, if you want to discover some films that you've probably never heard of, or you just want to see if your opinions hold up, join me as I break down these 5 movies and why Mumblecore was kind of an overrated and definitely short-lived movement. So around the late 90s into the early 2000s, there was a lot of technological advancements in digital cameras and editing softwares.
Digital cameras, which record images directly into memory rather than on film, allow cyber shooters to snap and download images directly into their computers.
And these advancements made filmmaking much more accessible for those who couldn't get Hollywood-type funding. And that's because this new equipment and programs were so much cheaper than before.
Let me!
A lightweight 35mm camera that anyone can use.
Just push!
And to stay on par with these low-budget morals, these filmmakers relied on many personal connections for their casting and sets. Majority of the time, those who directed and wrote the films are also acting in it with their friends and many other people that are working on the film, oftentimes filming in places like their friends' apartments and public spaces. So this is just to say it was a very DIY genre that was meant to feel extremely natural. And overall, this whole movement was about young filmmakers that embraced minimalistic aesthetics and storytelling. So we're going to talk about 4 young filmmakers that I'm considering kind of the pillars of the genre. And I'm going to try not to butcher these names. We have Andrew Bujalski, who's known as the father of Mumblecore.
Oh, I hate Mumblecore. Mumblecore sucks.
Mark Duplass, who is the star of late 2010's hit sitcom The League.
You traded away your first-round draft pick? What did you get in return?
Naming rights.
Joe Swanberg, who I really have no fun facts about.
In a way, I almost wish that the films could have a smaller presence.
And Greta Gerwig, who's a living legend.
Get points by slashing like this.
And just in case you were wondering where the name Mumblecore was coined, there was a sound editor named Eric that was asked what was similar about the 3 movies that were submitted to a South by Southwest Film Festival in 2005. Those films being Joe Swanberg's Kissing on the Mouth, Andrew Bujalski's Mutual Appreciation, and the Duplass brothers' Puffy Chair. He said that the common theme was the mumbling characters, and I think that term was the perfect encapsulation of this genre. Even though Andrew Bujalski, the person that is literally widely regarded as the father of Mumblecore, will not claim the term.
Certainly none of us who made any of those movies ever set out to make a Mumblecore movie, and it wasn't anything that I think had much to do with what any of us thought we were doing.
So let's start talking about one of these films so you can get an idea of what I was talking about.
Well, did you hear I got fired?
Like fired?
Fired.
Follow me to the shipwreck shores of a dark and strange country.
The first one we're going to go into is Andrew Bujalski's Funny Ha Ha. So this one actually came out before the term Mumblecore was even coined, but it is really the first full-on Mumblecore movie. It had all the boxes and had a budget of only $30,000, which is insane. So Andrew Bujalski's Funny Ha Ha tells the awkward and endearing story of Maureen, a recent college graduate navigating the uncertainties of post-grad life. Maureen's search for love and purpose unfolds in a way that's both relatable and uncomfortable. And that's kind of what most of these films feel like. And I'll be honest, when it comes to this one, Funny Ha Ha, I wasn't a huge fan. I'm able to appreciate the lifelike verbal exchanges and realistic story flow, but it does get kind of tough to ignore the low-quality imagery and audio.
Why you gotta count it like I'm broke?
This film's main problem for me is that it has a really hard time keeping me gripped. And don't get me wrong, I definitely have like TikTok brain, but it kind of just feels like we're hanging out with all these characters. But this was just the beginning, because others saw this film and they fell in love with the formula. And although it didn't get into theaters until 2005, in its first week it did nearly $100,000. And if you remember back, the budget was only $30,000, so not only did filmmakers really like how the story was portrayed and how it was shot and just how everything was done, they really liked the profit compared to how much was actually spent to make it. Super exciting fun fact alert.
Salsa shark.
I want to talk about what was claimed as one of the largest influences to this genre, and that was Kevin Smith's 1994 film Clerks. I can see the influence, but I wouldn't say that any of these films are super similar to Clerks at all. Clerks had a clear process of which things are happening and people are being introduced. And in all of these Mumblecore movies, nothing is going to be clear.
I found a replica of it on eBay, and I bought it from this dude, and Emily and I are driving in the van to pick it up, and we're gonna bring it to Dad for his birthday.
So now I want to talk about one of the most successful films in this entire genre, and that is 2005's The Puffy Chair, made by the Duplass brothers.
Welcome Jay and Mark Duplass.
So this film is just about a guy who's trying to get a chair for him and his brother because it's the same one they used to have. But it doesn't go well, the chair sucks, and then all the characters get a little ugly.
It's totally unacceptable.
No big deal.
I really like this film, and I'm trying not to be biased because I really like the actors that are involved. I like it because there's really real passion here and a more wide range of emotions. You know, at least they get mad at stuff and do more and hit more obstacles that are actually addressed compared to others that are solely focused on personal relationships. They yell, they get stern, they do dumb things, and most of the time, the most realistic option is what ends up happening. So this is a really solid Mumblecore. It's a very proud point of the genre, and I would almost recommend watching this one. But the real intrigue here is the financial success that this film had. If you thought a $30,000 budget was really low, because it is, this one cuts that in half. Literally a $15,000 budget. And it did $200,000 in the box office. And at this point, the genre has really hit its stride. And Mark Duplass and his female co-star from this movie found real success from this that we're going to talk about later. So next up, I want to talk about a film that Mark Duplass was involved in, but for the most part, we're talking about two other of these pillars of Mumblecore, and one who actually became the most successful of the four. This is 2007's Hannah Takes the Stairs, directed by Joe Swanberg and involving Greta Gerwig. So Hannah Takes the Stairs is another film solely about Hannah and her relationships with others. Overall, the whole film is about Hannah trying to find love and being so eager to find said love that she would really accept it from anyone that sat in front of her for too long. And ending with the same setting as the opening scene, to me, seems to mean that realistically, she made no progress in her quest, but being willing to change things is effort enough to qualify as progress itself. So I wasn't a huge fan of this one either, and by focusing so heavily on personal relationships, they lost me again. And even with using so much improvised dialogue, which is a staple of the genre, it still felt like the film followed a very rigid story, which is not a staple of the genre. Like, I can appreciate the lessons of working to improve yourself and get the things that you want out of life, even at the expense of others, but I just don't love how this film portrayed that. And this kind of shows in the box office numbers. It ended up making about $30,000, and I'm not able to compare that to the budget just because I wasn't able to find it, but I'm assuming it did not have the 3x threshold from budget to box office to make it worthwhile.
My uncle has a cabin on Big Bear. We drive up there this weekend. We write a feature film that stars us.
So now let's talk about another film created by the Duplass brothers with 2008's Baghead, which also had Greta Gerwig. And this is not to be confused with 2023's Baghead, but basically 4 young filmmakers decide they should go out into a cabin in the woods to write a movie. And eventually, after Greta's character has a dream about a bag-headed individual, the group begrudgingly agrees to write a horror movie about that subject. But eventually, their story comes to life, as Greta sees this individual in her room, and finally on their third encounter with the baghead, he actually attacks them, he kills one of their friends, and the rest of the group begins to run off, fearing for their lives until one of them is hit by a car. where they are then informed by the bag-headed man that it was all a prank from their other co-worker slash friend that is still alive and well. So I actually like this one. There was a horror element, so maybe I'm gonna be a little bit biased, but it was interesting. You know, things actually happened while still keeping the core values of being heavily involved with personal relationships and having improvised dialogue and having a small budget, but I still feel like the story structure was stronger. And I find that this is the case in the Mumblecore films that the Duplass brothers were actually involved in making. They actually lay out a series of events that requires reactions from these characters so you can learn more about them than just what they think of the others in the film. And to me, that gives them a lot of depth, all while strongly standing within the pretty soft guidelines of a Mumblecore movie. And let's talk financials real quick.
It's always about money, isn't it?
Their budget for this film was about $60,000, which still, once again, small budget, and it did a little over $150,000 in the box office. And this makes it a little bit less of a success than the Puffy chair, but this is still a smash hit in terms of Mumblecore money. Super exciting fun fact alert. So both these films, Hannah Takes the Stairs and Baghead, involve Greta Gerwig, acting in Baghead and acting in and being credited for screenplay with Hannah Takes the Stairs. Either way, simply acting in a Mumblecore film basically gives you a partial writing credit, but these are some of her first films that were able to hit theaters, only to be succeeded by 2006's LOL, which itself seems to be Mumblecore, but I didn't watch, so I can't claim. As we all know, this was the start to an absolutely illustrious career. She went on to have an unbelievable directorial run recently with 2017's Lady Bird, 2019's Little Women, and 2023's Barbie, all critically acclaimed films. This is a clear example of the Mumblecore tagline helping propel a young filmmaker with a low budget into theaters where people can see them shine. And as for another one, we have Mark Duplass. He also had success after getting started with Mumblecore, although his path was more as an actor, taking a starring role in The League in 2009, which was a wildly successful sitcom for half a decade. Then he had a starring and producing role in Creep, which is not only a fantastic horror movie that I love, but it is in itself also basically a Mumblecore movie. They're calling it Mumblegore because it is much more horror than most of the Mumblecore movies you think about, but it fits a lot of the same lines. It's very realistic, low budget, and extremely natural. But either way, most recently you can find Mark Duplass in Apple TV's disaster of a series that is The Morning Show. But alright, super fun fact alert over. So now that we've appreciated Greta's absolute greatness for just a second, I am forced to take a slightly more negative perspective when we talk about the other two pillars of the genre, and that's because the other two pillars of this genre really haven't fared out as well. As for Andrew Bujalski, he's sort of peaked with 2002's Funny Ha Ha.
That's rude.
Going on to make Computer Chess, Supporting the Girls, and There There, none of which I've seen. But I'm mainly saying this because they also haven't really had much box office success. And as for another director that peaked with Mumblecore, we have Joe Swanberg. He just never really left the genre, with one of his biggest things since 2007 being a directing credit in VHS, which is solid and is also Mumblegore again. But his most successful film was a actually more recent, still Mumblecore movie, just a little bit more Hollywoodized, if that's a word. We have 2013's Drinking Buddies.
When it comes to weddings, you want something that you know most people are gonna like, gets everyone sufficiently drunk, no fights between the families. Can I see the ring? Oh my God. What? Wow, that's beautiful. That's great.
And I just want to talk about this movie for a second before we move on. And I'm just going to quote my Letterboxd review here. Follow me on Letterboxd, by the way. So let me just say, Mumblecore definitely should have stayed in the early 2000s. I'll be honest, out of the two of Joe's Mumblecore movies, this one is way better. There's actually stuff going on sometimes, but it is also much more Hollywood with a higher budget and more name brand actors. So it should be better. But the style of storytelling is still very similar, and what I'm assuming is partially freestyle dialogue is also similar. Although it was just a really frustrating story. Two people just being so blatant with their outward affection, which is very on brand for Mumblecore, while being in two separate relationships for a majority of the film. And then it literally took them the entire movie to address the fact that that was weird. Super annoying. But yeah, so that was Joe Swanberg's biggest success so far. But overall, it looks like the formula worked out like this. Starring in Mumblecore movies actually worked out well, as can be seen with Greta, who was able to parlay that into more roles and some serious directing success, and also with Mark Duplass. His Mumblecore roots helped him and his co-star from 2005's Puffy Chair get on an awesome sitcom. On the other hand, solely directing in Joe Swanberg's situation only really found him success in that genre. And that also kind of goes for Andrew Bujalski. He did a lot of acting in Funny Haha and Hannah Takes the Stairs, but he also didn't find much success outside of Mumblecore. So why isn't Mumblecore really still a thing? This is mainly because eventually the novelty of Mumblecore just ran out. A large part of this fall-off was because many of them followed much too similar of guidelines. Someone just bouncing around jobs and just sort of flowing through life with their friends, along with the improvised acting and camera work. And not to mention, these low budgets resulted in really subpar visual and audio quality. But it was a fantastic outlet for these young filmmakers, and we really should be thankful to Mumblecore for giving us the gift that is Greta Gerwig, but we really shouldn't expect this genre to have a strong revival. Alright, well that's just going to be about it for the Mumblecore deep dive. I really enjoyed making this video. I watched I want to say 7 or 8 of these Mumblecore movies, and truly, I really wouldn't suggest watching them. They're not super entertaining for the most part. I really like Puffy Chair, but that was just about it. But I had fun doing this. I really love just deep diving into these random film genres, like I did Slasher last time, and that one I just truly love. But this one was really cool because you get to see young filmmakers building their career and doing things that others thought were kind of impossible with super low budgets. So whatever, that was really fun. If you guys have some sort of niche film genre you'd like me to dive into, please let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Hey, shout out Pending Doom for making my intro. Make sure you check him out on YouTube. He just dropped something recently, and yeah. Fun little video essay. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I will see you next time.